Okay, we're recording now. Looks like we're doing something okay. Looks like we got sound. So this is part 2 of CSS, and we're going to pick up sort of where we left off yesterday. So let's go back to the syllabus. We were working on cascading style sheets. This is this section right down here. So we did this video yesterday. We did it 43 minutes on getting started in this CSS reference, and we're going to pick up on that again today. So we'll move back to the CSS reference page. We'll sort of look over what we did here. We talked about CSS structure and where we put it and how it's related to remote style and page style. It's in the heading, and then local style is down in the body. And talked about that. We talked about classes. And then we went through most of the box model yesterday. So we're going to skip down and pick it up where we left off when we finish with the box model. And those are basically borders. We looked at all these radiuses, and we got down to, let's look at border images. Okay, border images is a little bit more obtuse than most things. What we're going to do is we're going to make a border out of images. So we're going to start off with this one. This is a very odd thing to do, but if we're going to make a border out of images, what we've got to do is we've got to have 8 segments. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some image. In this case, this colored ball is 45, which is a 45 by 45 pixel image. And we can divide it up like a checkerboard into 3 rows and 3 columns. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this image. We're going to take pieces of this image to make the borders. So I'm going to use blues in the corners, green one and this green one on the top and the bottom, and red ones all along the side. Okay, so let's look how we would split that up. So if we said the border is 195 pixels wide and 45 tall, that'll mean each one of these is 15. So we can see how we pick up this blue one once, this one once. Because this is, 45 high, we get the red ones on this, the rest ones this side, and the green ones along the top. Well, it was very effective, but that's not exactly, something that I want to do on a regular basis. If I want to put a border around something that's based on an image like this, more reasonably what I might want to try to do is take a border like this. In other words, the way a picture frame works. So what I've got is I've got this 102 by 102 image, and I'm going to divvy it up the same way. I'm going to have corners, and then I'm going to have sides and tops. And here's my image. So I'm going to split it the same way. And this is what we get. So we get this. Let's see if I can get both of these on the page here. Make this a little bit taller. So here's the image. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the corner, the upper left corner here, the upper right corner here, lower right, lower left. Then I'm going to stretch the top and the bottom and the left and the right and apply the same. I'm going to get that. Not bad. Looks reasonably good when we do it that way. Boy, it didn't cost us very much to, we went to the store to do it. It cost us a lot. And then what we can do is we can add a, nice little border around the inside of it, and it'll work exactly the same way. It makes the picture notice it's a little bit bigger, but works really nice. Now this whole thing is predicated on this image and finding the right image so that you can make a picture border out of that image by cutting it up and applying it like that. And then put a nice mat around it. Okay, so let's look at some more things. So this is the outline. Okay, so this is really strange. The outline goes outside the border. Oh my God, this is another border element. So it's got a style and a size and a property, but it's on the outside of the object. It doesn't make the border. So it's just an outline. I've never had an occasion to want to use this, but it has all kinds of characteristics. Mostly we have to be able to change the color of it. We got to be able to do dash borders and dotted borders and all that. And the color specifications, we might as well talk about this while we're here. There's basically, this is just a little color specification. We'll put it in right here because we need to. The fact that we can name things by these are 147 color names. We'll talk about that later. And then there's those hexadecimal equivalents. And then there's the RGB equivalents between 0 and 255. And then there's a percentage equivalence. So for these colors, this is a little example of how you can say this is magenta. Magenta is a mixture of all red and all blue. You can see that 100%, 100%. No green makes magenta. And lime is what you would really think. This is the most green. And you would think this is called green, but actually it's called lime because it's so bright. And this is a middle gray, 128, 128, 128. And here's a brown, which is sort of a hard color. Brown's really, really difficult to do. Okay, so here's my outside color here. It's sort of a dark red, and it's got a dotted style. It works the same way. But we're going to put this on the outside of this border. That's why it's called an outline. Styles work the same way as they did with the regular borders. Same kinds of options, dotted dash, solid grooves, inset, outset. Width, done the same way. Box shadows. Okay, so the box shadows this is a little more stranger. What we're going to talk about now is how to lift something off the page and put this border like it was a shadow all around this. Now we've seen this where we're going to look at a bunch of places where we've actually done this. All of this is called a cartouche. So this is what I'm using for all of my lectures as a simple title thing, and it's called a cartouche because the cartouches were the names of the Egyptian pharaohs that they carved into the stone, and they were always contained in this round square thing, and they would put the name of the pharaoh in the middle of it. It's just called a cartouche. Okay, so what we're going to do with this particular thing is we're going to look at the shadow made by a box. So this is a regular box, and then this little area right over here is the shadow. So we can have all kinds of shadows. We can have no shadow, which is normally the way it's done. It's a horizontal shadow. Vertical, in other words, we'll talk about this one. We talk about normally the shadow is going to be on the bottom and the right. Generally speaking, everything assumes that the light is coming from the upper left-hand corner this way. So any shadow is going to be on the bottom and on the right-hand side. And then we're going to have to say how much shadow we want, like that. And so we got the amount of blur. 0. This is really sharp. There's no blur in it at all. That would have to be just like a really bright point light where we get this very, very fine, sharp shadow. And then we get what's really more likely is you get a little bit of a blur here, right? So the values of this, require, us to do a couple of things here. So this is sharp, and this is blurred, and this is even blurred more. It's even more spread out. Now, notice what would happen if we make the numbers negative. We put the blur at the top on the left side. Notice that looks a little bit odd. And we can also change the color of the shadow. I don't really think I ever want to do that. Blue shadow, that's sort of shadows are black. Okay, and then this one turns the thing, and we put the shadow on the inside, like that. That's okay. And this one we're doing shadows on both sides. So we got a little shadow up the top and a little shadow on the bottom. And that's sort of a nice effect. And we can also turn the radiuses. We give it a radius right here. Notice the shadow, we can make the shadow turn that same radius. So shadows are reasonably nice, and I seriously use them specifically. Now, notice my shadows on these I pulled those way off the page. I didn't want a real sharp shadow. So notice this, it's a real fuzzy shadow, but all the shadows on the right and down at the bottom. Okay, box shadow. Pretty strange things. Okay, now I get to the big one, fonts. Now, this is probably the biggest change that happened between HTML and in any of the other additions they made. Font. This is really when they finally got their head around. We got it right. Okay, so font's going to have a whole lot. It's got a font. It's really got 5 variations. It's considerably more than the options we had originally in HTML4. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these things. There's font, 6 values. Okay, let's talk about font style while we can see it here. So font style is normal and italic and oblique. Okay, this is what happened to the italic tag. So we have italic and normal. Italic, which was the I tag originally, that is now an option of font style to make it italic. Looks like that. Okay, let's go down a little bit more. Then we can come up here and see this one's also italic. Okay, for font variant, another font variant. This is small cap. Oh man, let's go look at this one. This is small cap. Okay, so here is small cap. Looks like that. It's when all the lowercase letters are actually the same fonts as the capital letters. Font variant is called small caps. And I've never used that before, but at least it's there. Okay, so let's go look at font family. This is probably the most interesting one, is try to pick the font out. And there are a couple of generic names. You can have a serif font, a sans serif font, a cursive font, fantasy font, monospace font. You can use these generic names or specific family names. Okay, so the big deal about font families is, their relative popularity. Times New Roman, this is the default font for the web pages. It is the font that is used by the New York Times newspaper. Probably the most studied font. Extremely good font for reading a lot of text, which is why the web people chose Times New Roman as sort of the default text font. There's a couple of variations. George's not too bad. Garamond's not too bad. These are regular, good-looking, printable fonts. And you'll notice they're serifs. So let's compare that to this column, which are sans serifs. In other words, French word meaning sans without serifs. Okay, so our serifs are these little perpendicular lines that are attached to the ends of all of the letters. Now what a serif does, it helps your eye stop, and when to stop looking at the corners. So they have these little perpendiculars on serif fonts, and all of them, they're just little perpendiculars they put at the beginnings and the end. It makes it easier on your eye to know when the end of the line happens. And you'll notice the different with the sans serif fonts is they don't have those kinds of serifs. Cursive, largely useless. These are fonts that would look like you had written things by hand, but they are terribly difficult to read. Fantasy fonts, something like that I've seen used before. That's called the stencil font. These are very strange Old English fonts. Monospace. Okay, I use these a lot. These are the ones where every character is the same width. So if we come over and look at Times New Roman, for example, you'll notice how narrow that I is compared to that capital T. So these are called proportional fonts, and these are called fixed width fonts. Every character is the same width. Now, this one, Lucida happens to be a really nice fixed width font. And I use it sometimes if I'm doing programming things where I want columns to line up. Courier, this is the old IBM typewriter font. It's been around forever. It works reasonably well for computer things. Yeah, you don't want to mix a lot of fonts on your page. You may have to, do something where you have a need for a serif font or maybe a cursive or a fantasy style, but not nearly off. Most of the time, just leave it at Times New Romans if you're reading it. If you're going to do something weird, you might want to try some other things. But most of the time, Times New Roman is good for things you got to read. Courier is good for programming things so you can see things lining up on top of one another across multiple lines. Okay, font size, big criteria. We've got lots of different values here. We can make font size large, small. Now recall when we were doing this earlier in HTML4, we had the same sort of problem. We had a finite number of font sizes. But now we've got length. In other words, we're going to be able to specify font sizes down to a pixel size. So a 30 pixel font size is, relatively large. Default on normal HTML page is 14. That's what it comes up to normally. So a 30 pixel size font, that's approximately 30 pixels tall. It's approximately. Font weight, this is where bold went. Font weight is, if you want to make something bold, we now say font weight's equal to bold, as opposed to using the very simple B tag. Here, small caps, that's not particularly a big deal. Word spacing. I don't know about this one. This one lets you change the amount of space between words. In other words, how wide a blank is. Now, here's an example where I've made the word spacing 16 pixels. It was like, wow. There's really no reason for you to want to, jam the words together. I've never actually changed this. Relatively useless font. Okay, letter spacing. This is where we're going to change the space between the letters. Equally a ridiculous idea as word spacing is letter spacing. So we put 16 pixels between the letters and we get that. I'm not sure why you would have that, but at least it's something to say about it. Text decoration. This is where underline went, where the U tag went. Now, underlining is done with text decoration : underline, like that. Now, we can also overline. Really? Okay, fine, overline. So underline and overline. Line through, that's what used to be called strikeout, and blink is back. Don't ever make your font blink. Put it back in, they should have left it out. Okay, vertical align. Vertical alignment is an extremely difficult thing to accomplish most of the time. We're going to look at vertical alignment in a different way a little bit later. We'll come up with a set of CSS that'll vertically align anything. But basically, we've got ways to align things: subscript, superscript, subscript and superscript. We saw that before. Vertical line, middle, bottom, text bottom, top, middle, and bottom. That's the equivalent of left, center, and right. We're going the other way. So you can try these things out, and in some places they'll work well, and in some places they don't work well. But we're going to come back to this question, and we'll talk about how to vertically align anything, any box, a little later. Okay, this is text transform. This capitalizes stuff, or converts stuff to lowercase, or converts stuff to uppercase. Now, the problem with the capitalization is it capitalizes every word. So it doesn't just capitalize sentences, so it's less useful than you might think. Text align. Okay, this is actually very useful. We can left justify text, we can right justify text, we can center text. This is where the center tag went. Now it's text align center, left, and right. Line height, again, something you probably don't want to change. The line height should be approximately the the font size in pixels. If you make the line height very tall, that's just going to make, you know, the lines vertically farther apart. Got to have a reason to want to do this. Text indent. Now this one's actually pretty useful. This allows us to get back to what we used to do to how to identify a paragraph. Is, and you go read the old books, that the text is always indented a couple of characters, and we can make this happen and give us me a 45 pixel indentation here. Depending on the font size, 45 pixels could be, you know, several characters in length. Color. Okay. So color, there's just the only difference in colors is there's a lot of different formats. There's a hexadecimal color. Yeah, there's a single hexadecimal color. There's RGB. There's RGB percents, and then there's color names. Okay, so right here, let's start off with the color names. Here's the page that is 147 named colors. This is 2008. Okay, so notice these are nice color names. The color names have no spaces in them. You can use upper and lower case. It doesn't really matter. And here is the hexadecimal, how to say that color in hexadecimal, how to say it in RGB, an amount between 0 and 255, and how to say it as a percent. And then here is a copy of what the color looks like. And there are 147 named colors. Okay, so this requires we actually discuss this a little bit. Let's sort them. Let's sort them in terms of intensity, from darkest colors to brightest colors of these 147 named colors. So these are all the ones that have, if you were to look at the hex, black's at the bottom, dark green's down there, and notice all these colors are really, really dark. And as we go down the sort, everything gets a little whiter till we wind up down here at white at 100% all the way around. Sort them in terms of the amount of red. These are no red, all the way down to 100% red. Sort them in green, sort them in blue, sort them by name. Okay, so many of these names, you know, they're pretty obvious, like that's brown. Okay, well that's sort of brown too. Chartreuse, not what I thought that would be. Some of the colors, if you said the name of that color, I mean, I wouldn't really know what color that is. Chocolate, I would have an idea, although that doesn't look like any chocolate that, you know, I would ever eat. And there's a whole class of these colors that are called dark something. All of these are dark things. You can sort of see that they're dark, the prefix to it. There's also a bunch of things that are light colors. These are all my lighter colors here. And then I have a couple that are medium colors. Now, medium purple. Okay, I'm hard pressed to know ahead of time what that might mean, but at least I can get an idea. So I have mediums and lights and darks. And then I have colors that, you know, I don't have any idea. So if you said, let's go look at this one. This is Gainsborough. Okay, so Gainsborough is obviously almost a color gray, not quite. One would think that would be the Gainsborough, the painter who painted Blue Boy, but it's not blue, so I'm not really sure about that. Hot pink, you would probably recognize that color. Gray, notice that's 50% gray. Lemon chiffon, got to figure it's some sort of yellow. Lawn green, I hope my yard never looks that color. Old lace, like sort of a very, very, very light braids. Olive drab. Orange. Okay, orange is a really useful color. And then there's orange red. Notice I've got a couple of pales here. Pale green, pale turquoise, not a lot of pale colors. Silver, that's just a variation of gray. Tan's okay. Teal's a nice color. It's half green and half blue. 50% of each. No red at all. Nice color, teal. Turquoise, a little bright for me. Yellow, all red, all green. Okay, these are the 147 named colors if you need them. There's also, in original notice, this is CSS 2. When we first came out with CSS, and remember we had several people, CSS date, this is version 1 is in 94, version 2 was in 98. Okay, so here's our 16 colors. I notice these are much more, primitive colors like black and blue and gray and green and lime. And they stuck orange in here, and here are the equivalents for doing that. Okay, color. Background color. Pretty simple, but we've got to pick one of these different ways to do it. RGB and hex, RGB with a single hex, RGB 0 to 255, RGB %. Okay, colors. All right, background color, that's just setting background color and picking the color format or the color name you want. Notice this color right here. This is CC9966. Progressively, a lot of red, less green, even less blue, comes out sort of tan. Background colors are reasonably important. I do set them a lot. Okay, background image. So this is where we're going to take a background image and we're going to use it. And the trouble with a background image is background images may not be big enough to cover the whole background. So what happens is when we put a background image in the background, if the image is small like this one, it tiles it. It just makes the rows of that image and columns of that image until it fills up the space. So I've got a div block. Div block's 300 pixels wide, 200 tall. I'm using the captain's picture here because it's 100 by 100. So we know we're going to see 6 things inside this div block. And here is the URL for where that image is located. Boom, boom. It works out nice for them. Okay, so this one just works out that way because the image is small. Sometimes you have to tell it to do a background repeat and how we want to repeat the image. We can repeat in both directions or just the X directions or just the Y directions or not repeat it at all. Okay, so this one is I'm obviously repeating it in the X direction. So here's my div block. I thought I said that. I didn't say repeat. Okay, I'll have to come fix that one. Whoops. Okay, here's background attachment. Now you notice the difference between the background attachment is as we move the page, the background stays the same. Oh man, that's really annoying, especially if the background is a photograph. Background position lets you just offset the tiling a little bit, not particularly important. Let me get by this. Okay, display. I use display a lot. It just changes the way a tag operates because I can set the tag to be something other than what it's supposed to be. So here's a span block, and what I'm going to do is change it so that it works like an item in a list. So I can make things act like blocks, inline blocks, make things look like a table, make it act like a table row, make it act like a table cell. I can change this display format, especially if I'm trying to do some things that are interesting. Most often I take span blocks and I'll turn them into inline blocks. So I can stack them up. Okay, white space. White space is stuff that will not print. A lot of things are white space. Tab characters are white space. You can actually put them in a document, but you can't see them. There's several kinds of white spaces, but we don't try to stay away from using it because they inject blank space, and it's hard to tell sometimes where the space came from. Okay, list styles. These are OLs and ULs, numbered lists and unnumbered lists. We've gone through this before. Composite properties. We've got the list style. Okay, we had disk, circles, and squares. Lowercase Roman numerals, uppercase, lowercase, alphabetic, uppercase. Just changing it. So here's one that's got lowercase Roman, like that. This one's if I want to use an image. So I've got a red ball here that's not picking up for some reason. I got a black ball right here at the moment. Position, whoops. The style position, it's whether it's inside or outside. You know, I really don't want to. You don't want to mess with that. Float, okay, float, really useful. This means I want to take a box and I'm going to move it to the left side or move it to the right side. So here's the captain's picture. Right, and it's inside a table tag, and I'm going to take that image and I'm going to float it to the right. So it just pushes it to the right. So I can float to the left or I can float to the right. I do this, you know, a lot of times when you look at how you need something in the bottom right-hand corner is you float it to the right. Okay, so I use this one a lot. Clear. This prevents floating elements to appear on the left or the right sides like this. So as I float right there, here's float left right here, and here's the center one. Don't use it. Okay, here's the exam. These are the two important ones. Position. The most critical thing that comes out of CSS is absolute positioning. Can have two kinds of positioning, absolute and relative. Absolute's the easiest to explain. It's the distance from its parent. So this is a div block or anything else inside another block. We're going to position things relative to its parents. Okay, so one of the things we have to be careful about with this is the parent, we're going to have to position the parent as well. Relative means in the normal flow of HTML. So if I'm going to position something inside my parent, the parent needs to have its position set to relative. And then I'll set the elements absolutely. Okay, so here is a position relative. These are just in the normal flow. I'm just shifting them over a little bit. Relative to their normal position, shift it over. Top. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this ball right here, and I'm going to position it relative, and then I'm going to say top 25. 25 position from the top. Amount of space from the left. Left 25. Position from the bottom. Okay, this one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. You would think it would be measured from the bottom. Actually, it's measured from the outside of the container, not the bottom. Right works the same way. You would think this was from the right side. It's from the right. It's on the left side of the box. Height. We did height. Height's simple. It just changes. When the important thing about talking about height is you don't use height and width together unless you make them the same. Otherwise, you're going to stretch that image out, and you really don't want to go stretching the image. Maximum width. It sets maximum width. Sets maximum height. For text, it can be. It sets a minimum. Sets the minimum height. Z-index. Okay, this is Z-index. This is really useful. This is the stacking order inside a box. So if you want things to sit on top of one another, this is this layering issue. The default Z-index, Z meaning it's coming toward you, is the page. That's Z-index is 0. The next layer is Z-index of 1, and the next layer coming toward your eye. And the way the browser does this, it draws all the Z-index zeros, and then it comes back and it draws all the Z-index 1s, and making these layers that come toward your eye. So here's an example of a Z-index like this. I take the picture, right, and Z-index 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so the fourth one, notice, is a small one. So the first one is the big one. This is this 175, then this 150 wide, and then this 125, and then the 100 wide. And they're laying down on top of it. If I'd done this in a different order, you would not have seen these three, because if this one had been Z-index 4, it would have covered up the rest of them. Okay, now here is the thing that we were talking about aligning any content. So I was saving up on this one because this one actually, works. This is what we're trying to do is take a box and we're trying to center something vertically and horizontally at the same time. In other words, I want it to be middle of the box going this way and center of the box going that way. So we don't have a simple solution, but we'll just have to worry about that differently. So this is the code. We've got a container name here, and we've got a second container name. Here's a div block, right? And here's a paragraph. And this is normally what we have to set in the container. This is the outside box. We've got a height and a width, and we're going to position it relative. And then we've got the container name, a paragraph inside that container name. We set its margin. Its position is absolute. It's 50% from the top, 50% from the left. We set its right margin at 50 minus 50%. And then we shift 50% down and 50% across. So this is what you do. You just say it like that. I take the name of the container. This is the name of the div, the ID of the div block, and put the paragraph here, and I take that paragraph and I vertically and horizontally center it. Cursor. Okay, so this lets me change the cursor, crosshairs, auto, default, pointer, move, text, help, that's a question mark, weight, east-west resize, east-west resize, north-south resize, northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest, progress. All right, all I do is just set the cursor. Right here, style. Cursor is cursor type. These are my cursor types. I don't normally mess with this. Now, the hand thing is, not bad. Okay, visibility. Okay, visible and hidden. All right, well, clearly what I want to do is I want to set visibility equal to visible. That means you can see the item. If I say visibility is equal to hidden, you can't see it. So it's set the visibility to visible or set the visibility to hidden. We can make it disappear. Okay, RGBA color. All right, this is a fourth dimensional. Well, we got red, we got green, we got blue, and this is the last piece, is opacity or transparency. Those have opposite. Opacity means how opaque it is. Transparency means how transparent it is. They are opposite notions. Also called alpha. Okay. So, but instead of measuring the amount of opacity, in other words, how transparent it is, going from 0 to 255. Opacity is always 0 to 1. That's a little bit odd. Okay, so when we set opacity to 1, it's completely opaque, and when we set it to 0, it's completely transparent. All right, so here is 100% opaque. Here's 75-25. Here's 50-50, 25-75. All that transparency is like 95% opaque. Okay, so here's some transparencies we can look at in a canvas. We can see what happens when we overlay these colors. We can see through. We have these things. This is white and gray. See through a little bit of them. This one has got some green and some blue, and what happens when we mix those overlays like this. This is just an example of using transparency. Okay. Let's run over to the syllabus for a second. And let's look at color. Now we've seen these color things before. So we did this when I looked at our color pages on this. So these are my color pages. This is 24-bit color. This lets me pick, some amount of red, some amount of blue, some amount of green. Here's the color, shows you the color. Here's the RGB values from 0 to 255. I switch this around, look at the red side, move the amount of red back and forth, move the amount of blue, the blue version, look at the green version, change the amount of green. All right, this is RGB, 24-bit color. I got a byte, 8 bits for red, 8 bits for green, 8 bits for blue, 24 bits. Okay, this is the more compact word. Now I'm going to do transparency. So now I've got the same idea. I've got red, I got blue, I got green. Here's my color right here. And then I've got transparency. Now what happens when I go from being completely transparent to being totally opaque? So if I watch this color, notice this now got 4 components. I got the red, the green, the blue, and the transparency. So notice this is bringing down the transparency here, making it more and more transparent. The red, the green, and the blue. So when I watch the transparency, you'll see this color. You'll see I'll be able to see through it or not. Okay, so this is a little bit beyond this discussion. You can play with this a lot. There's 2 variations of this. This is called 32-bit color. This is called 24-bit color. Okay, back to that. Let's go back down here to the CSS reference page. Columns. This is how you make it look like a newspaper. This is a relatively long-winded thing, but this is the idea. You put it into multiple columns. You can control the width of the columns. And also put some lines in between the columns. Not particularly useful though. I've done that a couple of times. Okay, now we're going to get into the tough stuff. All right, so these are in effect these are transmissions and animations. We're going to make things move. So transition properties. All right, so I'm going to change the size of this div block. Just like that. So I have a transition property. What is the thing I'm going to try to change? How long is this transition going to last? And how is the change going to take place? So this is a hover. This says when I hover over this div block, here's my div block right here. When I hover over it like that, I'm going to change the width, right, from 100 to 160 over a space of 3 seconds, making the change linearly. In other words, the same amount of change over the 3 seconds. So, boom, it's like that. So if you count, so I'm going to roll off of this and count it. So 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, takes it like that. Changing height over 3 seconds linearly. So I can do most anyone. This is a little bit different here. Here's one. See what this one does. This changes the height from 40 to 60 over 3 seconds. Like that. This one's just changing the height and the width. Change the height and the width over 3 seconds linearly. This is duration. This is how long the transition takes. This is duration. So if I'm going to do two things, I'm going to do height and width. I want the height to change over 3 seconds. I want the width to change over 1 second. So notice the width went really fast. The height went really slow. So I can differentiate in the properties for how long the transition duration takes. I can delay the start of the transition. I'm just changing the height. Notice I've got a delay of 1 second on the height, a delay of 3 seconds on the width. Height starts, and the width starts like that. Okay. Timing functions. Well, these things have names, and they're pretty much impossible to read. But these timing functions are going to get a little complicated here. We start looking at what this is over a period of time. How do we want this transition to take place? I want it to start, and how we want to finish over this period of time. Okay, so this is called a cubic Bezier function, and it needs 4 numbers to do this. These 4 numbers right here. Okay, so these 4 numbers are the coordinates of these 4 points right here. Look at these a little bit right here. This is a fixed point, and this is a fixed point. In other words, where I start and where I end, and then I have this angle right here. Notice how this transition's going to go, like that. Transition starts slow, quickly speeds up, and then it slows down toward the end. Okay. Now, I can this curve right here can take a lot of different shapes. So this is a linear transition. It changes the same amount over a period of time. This is called ease. Okay, so the transition starts and it slows down toward the end. This is ease in. It goes slow and speeds up a little bit toward the end. Here's ease out. Slows down the rate. Ease in and out, so it goes quick and then turns around slows like that. So this curve can take on a huge number of possible values. All right, let's go look at some things here. Let me back up. All right, this is transitions in cubic Bezier. This is one I wrote to let us actually do this. In other words, I'm going to be able to move this right here, this curve around like this. Now, the ones we just went over, if I say this, I get linear. Here's ease in, here's ease out. Here's ease in and out. And here's the custom version. Okay, so the custom version like that. So I can make this transition do, virtually anything. Now this is a pretty interesting one. This goes slowly and then really fast and then slows down again. Okay, so I can use any of these. Let's start off with linear. Now what I'm going to use, I'm going to take the captain's picture right here, which is 50 by 50, and convert it to 250 by 250. Let's do it linearly. Boom, like that. Now notice that my image width went from 50 to 250 over the period of 4 seconds. Now if I let go, it comes back. It goes from 250 down to 50. 250 to 50. Roll over it. Goes up from 50 to 250. I'm changing both the height and I'm just changing the width. Okay, if I just make it ease, goes up like that, slows down at the end. Fast, slows down at the end. Custom. Let's do this. Let's make it do this. Put this one over here and put this one right here. Okay, so now watch what it's going to go really quick in the middle. Boom, and slow down at the end. Back. Really quick in the middle, slows down at the end. Okay, so let's go look at the problem here. Okay, the return transition path isn't the reserve for the forward path. Okay, so I had a problem with this, and I've had a problem with this for a while now. You would think if I'm going to have a transition path and I'm going to go one way, that I would come back the other way. Well, what happens is it doesn't take, the returns path are not always the same. So I'm going to do one of these, and what you want to do is, here is the captain here, and I'm going to notice how I'm going to leave the thing fixed in the upper right hand corner and change the size. This is how it changes, like that. Then it changes like that. Okay, so notice the path forward was not the same as the path backwards. And here's a discussion about that. Here's the balloon example. Okay, why this doesn't work. So I'm going to mouse over the balloon. The balloon's going to bounce off the ceiling. It's a helium balloon. And it rolls up and it bounces off the ceiling. Now, I want if the way this works, it says we're going to follow the reverse path. Well, that's not what happened. What happens is it goes up and it bounces. Now, what happens when I mouse off of this, it should bounce and fall. It falls and then bounces. Up and bounces. Return path's not the same. Okay, this is a very odd result. I went to a lot of trouble to write this, but this is okay. You can play around with this. These Bezier curves work okay. And so you'll find them somewhat interesting. I think you could probably pick one of these transitions and it would be just as well. Okay, animation. Animation is going to do, very similar. I'll move something now rather than change the property. Animations are reasonably straightforward. Notice I'm changing something's position, and looks like I'm changing the background color from white to red. All right, and I'm changing the position over a space of 5 seconds. So I've got it. These animations are reasonably complicated. Let's get down here and look at it. They just let you move things across the page. I'm not much of a fan of moving things across the page. Okay, two-dimensional transformations. These are just shifting things. These are move things left and right. Change it right, take it back. Plus, minus. Change them vertically, like that. Change two directions, X and Y. Scale it. Okay, now I'm going to change its scale. I'm going to make it bigger or smaller. Bigger, smaller. Now notice this is the same problem. If I only change one of those things, it compresses it or stretches it. Scale the Y, same thing. I can compress it if I change both of them. That one works. I did both of them this time. Did one. Did them differently. Skew. Okay, skew means, well, let me show you what skew means. This is skewed. Right, I change it like that. Let's make a parallelogram out of it. Skew negative, skew 180. Or I can skew it just a little bit, like that. Now that's the X. I can do Y, like that. I can do them both. Now when I start doing them both, I can get some weird effects with how I can change that and stretch it. And rotate it. $180, $270, $90. I can change its axis. Rotate it like that. Rotate it like that. Rotate it like that. Rotation. Okay, now the biggie. 3D transformations. Okay, the 3D transformations, it's a little more complicated than the 2Ds. What I've got is notice I'm going to make a cube here. And I got a front face. You can see here's my front face. It keeps rolling around. It goes now on the back. And the front face is going to turn around here, come toward me, right? So I got four faces, front, right, left, and back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this cube. Now let's translate. Translate's going to move it, X, move it Y, move it Z. Closer to you, farther away. Scale it. Shrink the X. Squash it in the Y direction. Change in the Z direction, move. Rotate it. Rotate it. Rotate it. X, Y, and Z. Skew it. That's a little much. Like that. Change the perspective. It says Z distance. Change the origin. The vanishing point. And then we got what's called back face visibility. So when we rotate something, we don't want to see the things that are behind the things in front. So if I rotate this thing like this, like that, I want to make sure whether or not we have the back faces visible. Okay, so that's gonna get us to where we actually wanted to be right now. Is look at this 3D rotating slideshow. Okay, so this is something I did a couple of years ago. No, we don't even have to do anything. This thing's gonna fire up all by itself. These are pictures of my son from when he was a kid. And what we're doing is we're gonna put these pictures on a cube and we're gonna rotate that cube. We'll make this a little bit smaller so we can get a little bit more on the page. Okay, so here's my cube rotation. I can make it start at anywhere. Notice I'm going to just let it sit there. It's going to rotate through all of my, I've got 9 images here. And you'll notice as it rotates, you see the front picture gets rotated around the side. And if you look on the left side, you'll see the next picture coming up like that. Okay, so here's the code for all this. So this is reasonably extensive here. I'll leave this right here. So what I've got in my rotating cube is I've got here my 9 images. And I got some words I want for each of my 9 images. This is Julian drives the tractor. Too cool for words. So each one of the pictures has a title, a text title. And then I've got these images. These are my buttons, so I can start it back at the beginning. Go to the end. Pick up from the end. I got an outer div block and an inner div block. These are my 2 primary things, or my div blocks here. So let me get my readability back up here. Okay, so here's the JavaScript. Now you can already recognize a lot of this. Here's my images. Here's my 9 images. They're all JPEG files. Here's a place to store them. Here's a place to put the titles. Here are the titles. I'm going to put the bullet selectors on the page. I'm going to go out and get my images, store them internally in memory. And here's the cube rotation. So here's my timers. I build the nodes. And this code just keeps going on and on. Got a lot of CSS associated with it. It spins the cube, right? Transforms, does the Z's. Took me a while to write this, but man, it works really, really well. And you don't have to really do anything but change the data. So if you want this, just come up, get all your images, they're the same size. That's sort of a requirement. All you got to do is put them in the same subdirectory as this piece of code. Turn it on. Well, you might have to change this if you're going to have different titles. So I got 9 images. I'm going to need 9 different titles to go with it. Otherwise, this thing counts from the size. It uses the size of this array to figure out how many buttons and how many slide titles there are. It works okay. It's actually a really good way to do it, rather than we could have done this sliding around, but you know, I like this rotation. The box moves pretty quick. The browser's actually up to it. You'll notice this caution over here. In Safari it doesn't work well. Firefox it jitters. It's okay in Opera. Chrome it works best. That's why we're using Chrome, so this thing works much better in Chrome. And it's been true. It hasn't been fixed by any of the other people since this was done. Okay, so that's the rotation of this. Just a little example. And that's just about it for these 86 CSS properties. Okay, so we got the structure. This is the cascading part. We got the external style sheet. We've got the page style. We got the local style. And then we got this huge number of these things that we've sort of gone through. Good part about this is we're not going to have to worry about this too much. Okay. All right, let's go look at something on the exam. Let's go down here and pick one of these exams. Let's look at these exams. Okay. So one of the things you'll notice about the exams, these exams too, we talked about this when we were talking about writing the code for the XML. I'm going to give you all the root.child node stuff. Same thing applies here. I'm going to, whatever CSS that you need, I'm going to tell you what it is, like position, font size, z-index. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. This one only uses two of the things that are important. That's top and left. So I'm going to go out here and organize these things. I'm going to put me out in center field, like that. So all of this involves taking these names and locating them on top of this baseball diamond in the right place. And these are the locations for the 9 positions. This is the catcher. Famous catcher Yogi Berra, New York Yankees. But Yogi Berra down there at catcher. So there's Garcia over here. Garcia. And we'll put Gil Hodges on first base. We'll put Pee Wee Reese on second base. I'm playing center field. We'll go out and we'll put Duke Snyder out in left field. Carl Furillo in right field. These are players from the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers. Okay, so you can see how that is. And so the only 2 cascading style sheet things I'm using are top and left. Only 2 out of all 86. It's simple. Okay, so the idea is that what I'm telling you is I'm going to tell you on these things exactly how to do this. Exactly like this right here. If you need to know something, I'm going to tell you what the properties are. Position absolute, font size, z-index, top, and left. Let's go look at another one. Let's go look at summer. Here's a summer exam. Let's see. What am I doing here? I'm drawing a graph. Yeah, making a graph out of this. Okay, so these are ones I'm going to be using here with this particular case. We're going to get the data out. We're going to split it. We're going to convert this to a bar, which has a certain width attribute and a height attribute. And I'm going to set some of the position elements like that. Not much, but still we got to know some of those things. This is my XML here, my font tester here. Let's see if we can come up with some others that are more interesting. Yeah, not that one. Let's try this one. Okay, this is the one where we deal 4 hands of poker. There's a lot of this. They got a whole bunch of array information here, and they got a lot of top and left in it. Mostly it's going to be top. I want to take these images and I got to position them inside this div block like this. That'll be 40 pixels apart. So mostly on this one it's just top and left. And that's what most of these things are. Most of these things are top and left. So same thing with this one. The yellow one, 6, like that. The red one, 105, 99. Okay, so we're going to have to set top, left, height, width, and z-index, and position. So this is a case where I'm going to have to use them all. So I'm going to tell you what it is, and all you've got to do is, get the right logic that does the things that you need to do for this particular question. So the questions are, they both of these questions are, one of them being XML and one of them being style sheets. Likely it's going to be top and left what you're going to be doing, but you aren't guaranteed that. If you need to know anything over and above top and left, I'll let you know on the exam. I won't make you memorize these 85. Certainly do not try to memorize the 86 CSS properties. Anything you need to know about the properties, I'll give to you on the exam. Okay. Done. Sort of ready. We'll play our way off here. Okay.